Jin-Woo Kim wiped the grease from his hands and stared at the broken navigation screen. The stupid thing had been acting up for weeks now, but he could not afford to fix it, not when he barely had enough credits to keep fuel in his ship. B.O. Lucky. Dragon was old and ugly, but she was his, and that was all that mattered. He had been hauling cargo between the Outer Rim colonies for 3 years now, ever since he left Earth and all the bad memories behind. The job was simple enough: pick up mining equipment from the factory worlds and deliver it to the colonies that needed it. The pay was not great, but it kept him moving, and that was what he wanted. Today he was carrying a full load of mining charges and drilling equipment bound for the colonies, on Kepler 9. It should have been an easy run. Just 3 hyperspace jumps and he would be there in 2 days. But when he engaged the hyperdrive, something went very wrong. The ship lurched and shook like it was being torn apart. Jin-Woo grabbed the control stick and fought to keep the Lucky Dragon stable. Warning lights flashed red all over the cockpit and alarms screamed at him from every direction. The hyperspace tunnel collapsed around his ship and suddenly he was floating in normal space. With dead engines, Jin-Woo cursed in 3 different languages as he ran diagnostics. The hyperdrive was completely fried. The main engines were offline. The navigation computer was showing nothing but static. He was lost in space with no idea where he was or how to get home. He spent 2 hours trying to fix the engines using spare parts and pure stubbornness. The Lucky Dragon was built tough, but even she had limits. Finally, he got the backup power online and basic life support working. The main engines were still dead, but at least he was not going to suffocate. That was when the 3 ships appeared. They came out of nowhere like ghosts materializing in the void. Jin-Woo had never seen ships like these before. They were huge and black with sharp angles that looked like they were designed to kill. The ships moved with predatory grace, circling his tiny freighter like sharks around wounded prey. The communication system crackled to life. A harsh alien voice filled the cockpit, speaking in a language that sounded like grinding metal. The universal translator took a moment to process the words, and when it did, Jin-Woo felt his blood turn cold. Surrender, human. Your ship belongs to us now. You belong to us now. Jin-Woo had heard stories about the Kreks from other haulers. They were raiders and slavers who terrorized the Outer Rim. They took whatever they wanted and killed anyone who got in their way. Most spacers would surrender and hope for a quick death. Jin-Woo was not most spacers. He had been a combat engineer in the Earth military before he became a cargo hauler. He had fought in 3 colonial wars and lost more friends than he cared to remember. He knew what surrender meant when dealing with aliens who saw humans as nothing more than useful animals. The first Krek ship moved closer and Jin-Woo could see the docking tube extending toward his cargo bay. He smiled grimly and started moving through his ship. He had work to do. The cargo hold was filled with mining equipment and supplies. The mining charges were stored in reinforced containers designed to survive rough handling. Jin-Woo had handled explosives before. He knew exactly what they could do in the right hands. He worked quickly, connecting detonators to the mining charges and rigging them with motion sensors. Any alien who walked into his cargo bay was going to get a very unpleasant surprise. The Kreks might be bigger and stronger than humans, but they still died when things exploded. The docking tube connected with a loud clang that echoed through the ship. Jin-Woo could hear the airlock cycling and heavy footsteps moving through the connection. He crouched behind a crate near the back of the cargo bay and waited. The first Kreks warrior stepped through the airlock and Jin-Woo got his first good look at the enemy. The alien was massive, at least 8 feet tall, with thick armored skin and 4 powerful arms. Each arm ended in claws that could tear through steel. The creature carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. More Kreks followed the first one, filling the cargo bay with their bulk. They moved carefully, checking corners and scanning for threats. They were professional soldiers who had done this many times before. They just had never done it on a human ship. The lead Krek stepped forward toward the mining equipment containers and triggered Jin-Woo motion sensor. The explosion lit up the cargo bay like a small sun. The blast wave threw the aliens around like toys and sent shrapnel flying in every direction. Jin-Woo had positioned himself behind the blast shields he had rigged from cargo containers. The explosion was loud enough to make his ears ring, but the shields protected him from the worst of it. When the smoke cleared, half the Kreks boarding party was dead, and the other half was badly injured. The surviving aliens tried to retreat, But Jinwoo had more surprises waiting. He triggered a second set of charges that collapsed part of the docking tube. The explosion sent a shockwave through both ships and damaged the Krek's vessel. Docking system's emergency alarms wailed from the alien ship as it pulled away from the Lucky Dragon. Jinwoo watched through the porthole as the Kreks tried to deal with the damage. To their vessel, they had expected easy prey and instead found a trap that bit back hard. But his victory was short-lived. The other two Kreks ships were moving into position and they looked angry. Their weapons were charging and Jinwoo knew they were preparing to blast his ship into atoms. Rather than risk more boarding parties, they would simply destroy him from a distance. That was when the fourth ship appeared. This one was different, smaller and sleeker than the Krek's vessels. It moved with grace and precision, cutting through space like a blade. The ship was beautiful in a way that made Jinwoo think of art rather than war. The new ship opened fire on the Krek's vessels with weapons that painted the void in brilliant colors. The energy beam struck with surgical precision, targeting specific systems rather than trying to destroy the enemy ships outright. It was the kind of fighting that required incredible skill and technology. One of the Krek ships returned fire, but the smaller vessel danced away from the attack like it was performing a ballet. The pilot was better than anyone Jinwoo had ever seen. The ship seemed to anticipate every move the Kreks made. But then something went wrong. A piece of debris from Jinwoo's earlier explosion caught the small ship engines. The vessel lurched and began spinning out of control. Its beautiful dance turned into a desperate struggle for survival. The ship pilot managed to regain some control, but the engines were clearly damaged. The vessel limped toward the Lucky Dragon, trailing sparks and venting atmosphere. The communication system crackled to life again, but this time, the voice was different. "Human vessel. This is diplomatic courier, requesting emergency docking permission. To come aboard." Jinwoo hesitated. The voice sounded female and spoke perfect standard galactic. The ship had helped him fight the Kreks, but he had learned not to trust anyone in the Outer Rim. Still, the alternative was watching whoever was in that ship die from engine failure. He activated the docking systems. "Come ahead, but keep your hands where I can see them." The small ship connected to his airlock with a gentle bump that was nothing like the violent Krek's docking. Jinwoo grabbed a plasma torch and positioned himself where he could see whoever came through the door. If this was another trap, he would be ready. The airlock cycled and the door opened. A figure stepped through and Jinwoo blinked in surprise. The alien was beautiful in a way that made his brain stutter. She was tall and graceful with blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the ship's lighting. Her hair was silver and moved like it was underwater. Her clothes were elegant and practical at the same time. She looked around, the cargo bay taking in the scorch marks and debris from the explosion. Her large eyes widened as she saw the remains of the Krek's boarding party. "You did this?" she asked. Her voice carried amazement, and something that might have been respect. Jinwoo kept the plasma torch pointed at her but found himself relaxing slightly. "They came uninvited. I sent them home the hard way." She stared at him for a long moment, taking in his soot-covered face and the improvised weapons still scattered around the cargo bay. When she spoke again, there was definitely respect in her voice. "I am Hee-Jin Park of the Valdari Diplomatic Corps. Thank you for saving my life." Human Jinwoo lowered the plasma torch but did not put it away. "Jinwoo, Kim, and lady you picked. A hell of a time to drop by." Hee-Jin Park stared at the human male covered in soot and alien blood. He was shorter than most Valdari, but there was something dangerous about the way he moved, like a predator ready to strike. The plasma torch in his hands was steady and she could see the intelligence in his dark eyes. She had studied humans during her diplomatic training. They were supposed to be primitive and violent, but the tactical brilliance of turning mining equipment into weapons impressed her. The Krek's boarding party had been eliminated with surgical precision using nothing but commercial explosives. "We need to talk," she said carefully. Her ship was damaged and the Krek's vessels were still out there. "We are both in danger." Jinwoo glanced at the monitoring screen, where two Krek ships circled like hungry wolves. "Lady, I do not know what kind of diplomat you are, but those things out there do not negotiate. They take what they want and kill everything else." Hye-Jin felt a chill at his words. She had spent months infiltrating Krek's territory, gathering intelligence about their military capabilities. She knew exactly what they did to prisoners. The slave world she had seen still haunted her dreams. "You are correct," she admitted. "They do not negotiate, but we must work together or we will both die here." Jinwoo studied her for a moment, then nodded toward his ship systems. "My engines are dead and my hyperdrive is scrap metal. What about your ship?" Her elegant features tightened with worry. "My engines are damaged, beyond repair. The explosion debris punctured my fuel lines. I have perhaps 2 hours of life support remaining." Jinwoo cursed under his breath and walked to the cargo bay controls. He sealed the area where the Kreks had died and activated the cleaning systems. The smell of burned alien was not pleasant. "Tell me about those ships out there," he said. "What are we dealing with?" Jin accessed her ship's sensors through her personal data pad. The readings made her stomach clench. Krek's heavy cruisers class, 7 weapons. Both ships carry approximately 200 warriors each. They are waiting for reinforcements. "How do you know all this?" Jinwoo asked suspiciously. "Because I have been tracking them for 3 months. She replied, "I am not just a diplomatic courier, I am Valdari intelligence. The data I carry contains information about a massive Kreks invasion fleet." Jinwoo stopped what he was doing and turned to face her invasion fleet. "How massive, large enough to destroy my entire civilization?" she said, quietly. "The Kreks have been gathering ships from across the galaxy. They plan to attack Valdari space within days." The human was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. When he spoke, his voice was grim. "Lady, if that data is so important, why are you out here alone?" "Because no one else could get close enough to gather the intelligence," she replied. "The Kreks do not suspect a single diplomatic courier. They would notice a military vessel immediately." "Smart," Jinwoo admitted. "But now we are both stuck here with information that could save your people and no way to get it to them." That was when the proximity alarm started screaming. Jinwoo rushed to the sensor station and his face went pale. 2 more Kreks ships had just dropped out of hyperspace. They were bigger than the first group and moving fast toward their position. The lead Kreks ship opened a communication channel. The same grinding voice filled the cockpit, but this time it sounded angry. "Human vessel, you have 30 seconds to surrender before we destroy you." Jinwoo looked at Jin, who was rapidly calculating options on her datapad. Her elegant fingers moved across the display with desperate speed. "Can we run?" she asked. "With what engines?" Jinwoo replied. "My ship is held together with spare parts and prayer. Even if I could get the engines online, those cruisers would catch us in minutes. Then we fight," she said with determination that surprised him. Jinwoo laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Lady, I used up most of my surprises on the first boarding party. What am I supposed to fight 4 Kreks cruisers with?" Jin looked around the cargo bay, taking inventory of the remaining mining equipment. Her advanced education had included tactical analysis and she was rapidly forming a plan. "You still have mining charges," she observed, "and your cargo manifest shows industrial cutting lasers and electromagnetic pulse generators." Jinwoo followed her gaze and began to understand. "What are you thinking? The Kreks expect us to either surrender or try to run," she explained. "They do not expect us to attack. What if we turn your cargo ship into a weapon? That is insane," Jinwoo said. Then he smiled. It might actually work. They had 15 minutes before the Krek ships reached weapons range. Jinwoo and Jin worked together with desperate efficiency. She used her sensors to identify weak points in Krek's ship design while he rigged the mining equipment into improvised weapons. The electromagnetic pulse generators were designed to clear metal debris from mining sites. Jinwoo rewired them to create a focused energy burst that could disable ship systems. The industrial cutting lasers became makeshift cannons powered by the ship's emergency batteries, but the real surprise was Jinwoo's plan for the remaining mining charges. He loaded them into the cargo containers that were designed to survive atmospheric entry. The containers could be ejected from the ship and would look like debris to enemy sensors. Until they got close enough to detonate. "You want to turn garbage into missiles?" Jin asked. "Worked against the boarding party," Jinwoo replied. Why not try it on their ships? The Krex vessels moved into attack formation, expecting easy targets instead. They found the Lucky Dragon launching cargo containers directly at them. The containers tumbled through space looking harmless until they reached proximity range. The first explosion caught the lead Krex ship by surprise. The mining charges were designed to break through solid rock. They had no trouble punching holes in alien armor. The ship lurched and began venting atmosphere from multiple breaches. The second container struck another Krex vessel, but this one was ready. The ship weapons destroyed the container before it could detonate. But that was exactly what Jinwoo had hoped for. The explosion created a debris field filled with metal fragments, moving at high velocity. When the Krex ships tried to advance through it, their shields were overwhelmed by thousands of tiny impacts. Now Jinwoo shouted. He triggered the electromagnetic pulse generators. The focused energy burst struck the damaged Krex ship, and its systems went dark. The massive vessel went spinning out of control as its engines failed. But the other ships were adapting to his tactics. They spread out to avoid the debris field and began targeting the Lucky Dragon with precise weapons. Fire. The first energy beam struck the cargo bay. Jinwoo felt the deck plates buckle under his feet. Warning lights flashed as hull breaches were detected throughout the ship. We cannot take much more of this, Jin warned. Her sensors showed critical damage to multiple systems. Jinwoo was already moving toward the ship's controls. Then we do not give them the chance for another shot. He fired the maneuvering thrusters and sent the Lucky Dragon tumbling toward the nearest Krex ship. The alien vessel tried to pull away, but Jinwoo had calculated the intercept perfectly at the D. Last second, he fired the remaining cargo containers directly into the Krex ship's docking bay. The mining charges detonated inside the enemy vessel. The explosion tore through bulkheads and destroyed critical systems. The Krex ship broke apart in a shower of debris and escaping atmosphere. But Jinwoo victory came at a cost. The collision had damaged his own ship beyond repair. The Lucky Dragon was dying around them. Life support was failing, and the hull was cracking under stress. They had minutes before the ship came apart. The remaining Krex vessels were retreating, but reinforcements would arrive soon. They needed to escape, but both ships were too damaged to fly. That was when Jin made a desperate suggestion. My ship has a quantum communicator, she said. If we can transfer the invasion data to a Valdari military vessel. Jinwoo shook his head. Your communicator is broken. Remember. Not broken, she replied with a smile that was both beautiful and terrifying. Just damaged I can repair, but I need time and parts from your ship. Then we better get started. Jinwoo said the universe is not going to wait for us. Jinwoo crawled through the damaged corridors of the Lucky Dragon, following Jin toward her ship. The hull was groaning under stress and sparks flew from broken electrical systems. They had maybe 20 minutes before the freighter came apart. Completely. Jin moved with grace even in the cramped spaces. Her diplomatic training had included zero-gravity maneuvering, and it showed. She reached her scout ship first and began accessing the damage reports. The quantum communicator is intact, she announced, but the power coupling is destroyed. I need components from your ship's electrical systems. Jinwoo squeezed into her ship's tiny engineering compartment. The Valdari technology was elegant and advanced, but he could see the damage. The explosion had severed key connections and fried several circuit boards. I can fix this, he said, studying the problem. But we need to strip parts from my ship. The main power conduits should work. They had no time for careful repairs. Jinwoo grabbed his toolkit and started ripping components out of the Lucky Dragon while Jin worked on her ship systems. The freighter shook around them as more hull plates buckled under the stress. Tell me about this invasion fleet, Jinwoo said as he worked. He needed to keep talking to stay focused on the job instead of thinking about how they were probably going to die. Jin's fingers flew over her control panels as she rerouted power systems. The Krex have gathered over 3,000 ships, she replied. They have been building this fleet for years in secret. The attack will begin in 4 days. 3,000 ships, Jinwoo whistled. That is a lot of firepower. What does your military have to stop them? Perhaps 800 vessels, she said, quietly, and her voice carried the weight of despair. Most of our fleet is designed for exploration and diplomacy, not warfare. We have never faced an enemy like this. Jin Woo connected the power coupling and felt the system come online. The quantum communicator hummed to life, but the signal was weak. They would need more power to reach Valdari space. Why did they wait so long, he asked. Why build such a massive fleet for one attack? Because they do not just want to conquer us, Hyejin replied. They want to enslave us. The Kreks need workers for their mining operations and manufacturing. They see the Valdari as perfect slaves because we are intelligent and peaceful. Jinwoo had seen the aftermath of Kreks raids before, entire colonies stripped of everything valuable, including the people. The aliens were efficient in their cruelty. They took what they needed and destroyed everything else. We are not going to let that happen, he said with grim determination. The ship shuddered as another section of hull gave way. Emergency lights flickered and the artificial gravity fluctuated. Jinwoo could hear atmosphere escaping through multiple breaches. They were running out of time. The communicator is ready, Hyejin announced, but the signal is too weak to reach our military headquarters. We need more power. Jinwoo looked around the tiny engineering space and had an idea. What if we use my ship's reactor? The Lucky Dragon is dying anyway. We could overload the power core and use the energy surge to boost your signal that would destroy both ships, she pointed out. Jinwoo shrugged. Better than letting your people get enslaved. Besides, I was getting tired of hauling cargo anyway. Hyejin stared at him with something that might have been admiration. You would sacrifice your ship and possibly your life for people you have never met. Lady, I have seen what the Kreks do to prisoners. Jinwoo replied, your people do not deserve that fate. Nobody does. Before Hyejin could respond, the proximity alarms started screaming again. More Krek ships were dropping out of hyperspace. This time there were 6 of them and they looked angry. The lead ship opened communications. Humans and Valdari scum. You have caused enough trouble. Surrender now or we will take you apart. Piece by piece, Jinwoo looked at the tactical display and realized they were completely surrounded. The Kreks had learned from their earlier mistakes. This time they were keeping their distance and preparing to destroy both ships with concentrated fire. We need to buy time, Jinwoo said. How long to send your message? 2 minutes if we can boost the power. Hyejin replied. Jinwoo was already moving toward the Lucky Dragon reactor room. 2 minutes, I can give you 2 minutes. He sealed the connecting airlock behind him and activated the freighter emergency systems. The Lucky Dragon had been his home for 3 years. She was old and ugly, but she had never let him down. Now he was asking her for one last favor. The reactor controls were designed with multiple safety systems to prevent overload. Jinwoo systematically disabled every single one. The warnings were deafening, but he ignored them. The power core began building toward critical levels. Through the porthole, he could see the Krek ships moving into firing position. Their weapons were charging with deadly energy. He had maybe 30 seconds before they opened fire. Jinwoo activated the ship's communication system and opened a channel to the Kreks fleet. This is Jinwoo, Kim aboard the Lucky Dragon, he announced. You want to know what makes humans dangerous? The Kreks commander responded with contempt. You are about to die, human. Your threats mean nothing. Jinwoo smiled grimly at the camera. We do not make threats, we make promises. And I promise you that this is going to hurt. He triggered the reactor overload. The Lucky Dragon power core went critical in a controlled explosion that lit up space like a small star. The energy surge flowed through the connecting cables into Hyejin ship systems. The quantum communicator blazed to life with power Jinwoo had never seen before. The signal punched through space toward Valdari territory, carrying the invasion plans and tactical data that could save an entire civilization. But the explosion also created a massive electromagnetic pulse that swept across the Kreks fleet. Their ship's electronics went dark, and their weapon systems failed. The aliens found themselves floating helplessly in space. The Lucky Dragon was tearing herself apart from the inside. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut as sections of the ship depressurized. Jinwoo fought his way back toward Hyejin vessel. As his home died around him, he reached the connecting airlock just as the freighter main hull cracked open. The Lucky Dragon broke apart in a shower of debris, but she had done her job. The message was sent and the Kreks fleet was disabled. Hai Jin grabbed Jin Woo and pulled him into her ship as the airlock sealed behind them. Her elegant features were tight with concern. "Are you injured?" she asked. Jin Woo looked back at the wreckage of his ship floating in space. "Just my bank account," he replied, but his voice was rough with emotion. The Krek ships were already beginning to restore power. Their backup systems were coming online, and it would not be long before they could move again. "We need to leave," Hyejin said, but her engines were still damaged. Jinwoo studied her ship systems with professional interest. The damage was bad, but not impossible to fix. "Give me 10 minutes and some spare parts. I can get us moving. You can repair Valdari technology," she asked with surprise. "Lady, I have been fixing broken things my whole life," Jinwoo replied. "Your ship is just another broken thing that needs attention." While he worked on the engines, Hyejin monitored the communication channels. The quantum message had reached its destination, and Valdari Military Command was responding with emergency orders. Fleet movements were already beginning as her people prepared to face the Krek's invasion. "Your sacrifice may have saved my entire civilization," she told him. Jinwoo connected the final repair and felt the engines come online. "Save the speeches for later," he said. "We still need to get out of here alive." The scout ship moved away from the debris field as the Krek's vessels slowly regained power. Behind them, the wreckage of the Lucky Dragon drifted in space along with the remains of several alien ships. It had been a hell of a fight, but they were still alive and the mission was complete. The Valdari would be ready when the Krek's fleet arrived. Now they just had to survive long enough to see how the story ended. Hyejin's small scout ship limped through space with damaged engines and failing life support systems. Jinwoo worked frantically to keep the vessel running while she monitored long-range communications. The nearest Valdari outpost was still 2 days away through space, crawling with Krek's patrols. The ship was not designed for 2 people. The living quarters were tiny, and they were forced to share everything. Jinwoo found himself sleeping on the floor, while Hyejin took the single bunk. But the close quarters meant they had to talk, and talking led to revelations neither had expected. "Why did you leave Earth?" Hyejin asked as they shared a meal of emergency rations. Her elegant fingers moved carefully with the unfamiliar human food. Jinwoo was quiet for a long moment, staring at the stars through the porthole. "I lost my entire unit in a colonial war," he finally said. 20 good soldiers died because I made a mistake in calculating blast patterns. I thought cargo hauling would be safer." Hyejin studied his face in the dim light. She had read the files on human military conflicts. They were brutal affairs where soldiers faced impossible odds with primitive weapons, but she was beginning to understand that humans turned their weaknesses into strengths. "You were a military engineer," she observed. "That explains your skill with explosives." Jinwoo nodded. "I spent 5 years learning how to blow things up properly. The military taught me that every problem has a solution if you use enough force in the right place." "What about you?" Jinwoo asked. "What is a Valdari intelligence agent doing on diplomatic missions?" Hyejin hesitated, then decided he deserved the truth. "I have been undercover for 3 years. She said I volunteered to infiltrate Krek's territory because my parents were killed in a raid. I wanted to stop them from hurting anyone else." Jinwoo looked at her with new understanding. "You have been alone behind enemy lines for 3 years. That takes courage." She smiled sadly. "Courage or stupidity? I am not certain which. The Krek slave worlds are horrible places, Jinwoo. I have seen children torn from their families and entire populations worked to death in mining operations. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both lost in memories of loss and violence. But the quiet was broken by proximity alarms. A Krek's patrol squadron had found their trail. Jinwoo rushed to the control station and saw 3 enemy ships closing fast. The scout vessel weapons were damaged, and the HFY engines could not outrun a determined pursuit. They were going to have to fight again. "What do we have to work with?" he asked. Hyejin checked the ship's inventory. "Very little," she replied. "The emergency supplies include some basic tools and a small medical kit. There are no weapons and no explosives." Jinwoo studied the problem with the practical mindset of an engineer. The scout ship was not built for combat, but every vessel had potential weapons if you knew where to look. "The life support system," he said suddenly. What happens if we overload the atmospheric processors? Hai Jin looked puzzled. They would vent toxic gases into space, she replied, but that would not help us against enemy ships. Jinwoo smiled. It would if we use the gases as a weapon. The Kreks breath oxygen just like we do. What if we turn our exhaust into poison? The plan was insane, but it might work. They rerouted the atmospheric processors to create a cloud of toxic gases around their ship. When the Kreks moved in to capture them, they would fly directly into the poison cloud. But first they had to make themselves look helpless. Jinwoo shut down the engines and activated a distress beacon. The scout ship drifted apparently dead in space while the Kreks patrol moved closer. The alien ships approached cautiously, remembering what had happened to their comrades. The lead vessel extended a docking tube toward the scout ship while the other two provided cover. "Come on," Jinwoo whispered. "Take the bait." The Kreks ship connected to their airlock and began pumping atmosphere into the docking tube. That was when Jinwoo triggered the atmospheric processors. The toxic gases flooded into the alien vessel through their own docking connection. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Kreks crew began dying within seconds as the poison filled their ship. Emergency systems tried to purge the contaminated air, but it was too late. The alien vessel went dark and began drifting. The other two ships opened fire immediately, but Jinwoo was ready. He had used the distraction to restart their engines. The scout ship shot away from the dead Kreks vessel like a missile, but their escape had cost them. The damaged engines finally gave out completely, leaving them drifting in space with no propulsion and failing power. The remaining Kreks ships moved in for the kill. "This is it," Hai Jin said quietly. "We have no more tricks. No more weapons." Jinwoo looked around the tiny cabin and his eyes settled on the medical kit. Emergency medical. Supplies always included certain chemicals that could be dangerous in the wrong hands. "Maybe we have one more surprise," he said. The medical kit contained anesthetic gases and stimulant drugs. Jinwoo began mixing compounds with the careful precision of someone who understood chemistry. The result was a highly unstable explosive that would detonate from electrical shock. Hai Jin watched him work with growing amazement. "You are making explosives from medical supplies?" she asked. "The human military teaches improvisation," Jinwoo replied. "If you cannot find the right tool, you make one from whatever is available." He rigged the improvised explosive to the ship's electrical system. When the Kreks tried to board them, the resulting blast would destroy both vessels. But at least they would take their enemies with them. The Kreks ships were almost in boarding range when salvation arrived in the form of a Valdari military squadron. 6 sleek warships dropped out of hyperspace and immediately engaged the enemy. "The cavalry is here," Jinwoo said with relief. The Valdari ships moved with deadly precision, their advanced weapons cutting through Kreks armor like paper. The enemy patrol was destroyed in minutes, leaving nothing but debris and escaping atmosphere. The lead Valdari vessel opened communications. "Agent Park, this is Admiral Chen. We received your intelligence data and have been searching for you." Admiral Hai Jin replied with barely controlled emotion. "The invasion fleet is real. They have over 3,000 ships, we know," the Admiral replied. "Your data allowed us to prepare our defenses. The Kreks attack began 6 hours ago, but we were ready for them." Jinwoo felt a surge of pride. The sacrifice of the Lucky Dragon had not been in vain. Heejin intelligence had saved her people from slavery and destruction. But their celebration was interrupted by urgent communications from the battlefield. The Kreks invasion was larger than anyone had expected. Even with advance warning, the Valdari forces were being overwhelmed. "We need every advantage we can get." The Admiral continued. "Agent Park, your human companion has proven valuable in unconventional tactics. Would he be willing to help coordinate our defense?" Jinwoo looked at Hai Jin and saw hope in her beautiful eyes. These people had shown him kindness and accepted him as an ally. They deserved his help. "Tell the Admiral I am in," Jinwoo said. The Valdari ships tractored the damaged scout vessel and brought it aboard the flagship. Jinwoo found himself in the middle of a war council surrounded by elegant aliens discussing strategy and tactics. But when he suggested using human military doctrine, the reaction was immediate. Skepticism. "Your tactics appear suicidal." One of the Valdari commanders observed ramming attacks and improvised explosives violate all principles of civilized warfare. Jinwoo looked around the room at the worried faces. "Sometimes civilized warfare is not enough," he replied. "Sometimes you have to fight." Dirty to win, Admiral Chen studied the human tactical proposals with growing interest. "These strategies are unconventional," she said, "but they might work against an enemy that expects traditional responses." The plan they developed combined Valdari technology with human unpredictability. It was risky and dangerous, but it offered hope against overwhelming odds as the ships prepared for battle. Jinwoo and He-Jin found themselves alone in the observation deck looking out at the stars. "Whatever happens," she said, "I want you to know that meeting you changed everything. I thought I understood about courage and sacrifice." Jinwoo took her hand, feeling the soft warmth of her skin. "Lady, you showed me that there are still things worth fighting for in this galaxy." The battle alarm sounded, and they prepared to face the largest space battle in galactic history. Together, they would either save the Valdari civilization or die trying, but at least they would not die alone. The Valdari fleet moved into battle formation as 3,000 Krek ships approached their home system. Jinwoo stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the tactical displays with professional interest. The enemy had numbers, but the Valdari had advance warning and human tactics. Admiral Chen turned to him with worry in her elegant features. "Our simulations show we can hold them for perhaps 6 hours before our lines collapse. What do you suggest?" Jinwoo studied the enemy formation and smiled grimly. "Admiral, you are thinking like the Kreks expect you to think. What if we do not try to hold the line? What if we break it instead?" The Valdari commanders looked confused, but He-Jin understood immediately. "You want to punch through their formation," she said with growing excitement. "Exactly," Jinwoo replied. "The Kreks are used to enemies who fight defensively. They spread their ships wide to surround and overwhelm, but that makes them vulnerable to a concentrated attack." Admiral Chen accessed the tactical computer. "The central formation does have weaknesses," she admitted, "but breaking through would require sacrificing many ships." Jinwoo nodded. "Then we make sure those sacrifices count. We load the lead ships with every explosive we can, find and ram them straight into the enemy command vessels." The bridge fell silent as the Valdari officers processed this suggestion. It was brutal, direct and completely against their military doctrine, but it might work. "I will lead the attack," Jinwoo said quietly. No-Hee-Jin stepped forward, her voice firm. "We will lead it together." Admiral Chen looked between them and saw something that had not been in her tactical calculations. These two had learned to fight as a team, combining human aggression with Valdari precision. The combination might be exactly what they needed. "Very well," she decided. "Agent Park, you and Jinwoo will coordinate the breakthrough attack. I am giving you command of the assault squadron." The next hour was spent in frantic preparation. Valdari engineers worked with Jinwoo to modify their ships for ramming attacks. They stripped out non-essential systems and packed the empty spaces with explosives. The elegant vessels were transformed into guided missiles. He-Jin coordinated with the fleet commanders to identify priority targets. The Krek's command ships were heavily armored, but they had weak points that could be exploited. Her intelligence about enemy ship design proved invaluable. As the fleets closed to weapons range, Jinwoo and He-Jin took command of a modified cruiser. Their ship was loaded with enough explosives to level a small moon, but they would only get one chance to use them. The Kreks opened fire first. Their massive energy weapons lit up space with deadly beams. The Valdari fleet responded with precision strikes targeting specific enemy systems. The battle was beautiful and terrible at the same time. The first phase went exactly as planned. The Kreks spread their formation wide, trying to surround the smaller Valdari fleet. Their command ships moved to the rear where they thought they would be safe. That was when Jinwoo launched his surprise attack. The assault squadron shot forward like arrows aimed at the heart of the enemy fleet. Their ships were fast and heavily armed, but more importantly, they were unpredictable. The Kreks had never faced opponents willing to sacrifice everything for victory. The lead ships smashed into the Kreks formation with devastating effect. Each impact was followed by massive explosions that tore through alien armor and destroyed critical systems. The enemy line began to collapse as their ships scattered in confusion, but the attack came at a terrible cost. Half the assault squadron was destroyed in the first minutes of combat. Jinwoo watched good ships die around him and felt the familiar weight of command decisions. "Stay focused," Hyojin said over the communication channel. "We can mourn later. Right now we finish the job." Their ship punched through the enemy formation and found itself face to face with the Krek's fleet command vessel. It was a massive dreadnought that dwarfed everything around it. The ship bristled with weapons and armor that could withstand anything. Jinwoo looked at the tactical display and made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. "Hyojin," he said calmly, "I need you to target their main reactor with our remaining missiles." She looked at him with sudden understanding. "You want to ram them?" "The command ship is too heavily armored for a normal attack," Jinwoo replied. "But if we can breach their reactor containment, the explosion will destroy everything within 50 kilometers. Including us." Hyojin was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled with the same dangerous expression he had learned to love. "If we are going to die," she said, "let us make it count." They drove their ship straight at the Krek's dreadnought, while enemy weapons tried to destroy them. The cruiser shook under multiple impacts, and systems failed throughout the vessel. But the ship held together long enough to reach ramming speed. At the last second, Hyojin fired their missiles into the exact spot where the dreadnought reactor was located. The armor cracked, and atmosphere began venting from the breach. Jinwoo aimed their ship directly at the damage. The collision sent shockwaves through both vessels. The Valdari cruiser punched deep into the enemy ship before her hull finally gave way. But the ramming attack had done its job. The Krek's reactor went critical in a chain reaction that consumed the entire dreadnought. The explosion lit up the battlefield like a new star. When the light faded, the Krek's command ship was gone along with most of their fleet coordination. The remaining enemy vessels began retreating in confusion without leadership to guide them. Jinwoo and Hyojin found themselves floating in an escape pod, watching the debris field that had been their ship. The pod life support would last maybe an hour, but they had won. The Krek's invasion was broken. A Valdari rescue ship found them 20 minutes later. Admiral Chen herself came aboard to greet them with tears in her elegant eyes. "You did it," she said. "The Krek's fleet is retreating, and their command structure is destroyed. It will take them years to recover from this defeat." Jinwoo looked around the rescue ship and realized he had no idea what to do next. The Lucky Dragon was gone. His cargo hauling career was over, and he was stranded in alien space with no money and no prospects. That was when Hyojin made an offer that changed everything. "The Valdari government wants to give you citizenship," she said, "and they are offering you a new ship designed for special missions." "What kind of special missions?" Jinwoo asked suspiciously. "The kind that require someone willing to blow things up creatively," she replied with a smile. 6 months later, Jinwoo Kim and Hyojin Park stood on the bridge of their new ship, the Diplomatic Solution. She was sleek and fast with the latest Valdari technology, but her cargo hold was suspiciously full of mining equipment and emergency explosives. Their first mission was a trade dispute on a frontier world that had gotten out of hand. The local governor was refusing to honor contracts and threatening to attack merchant vessels. "So what is the plan?" Jinwoo asked as they approached the planet. Hyojin checked her sensors and smiled. "We try diplomacy first," she said. "But if that fails, we have other options." Jinwoo looked at the mining charges secured in their cargo bay and grinned. Sometimes the best negotiations come from a position of strength. Their partnership had evolved from a desperate fight for survival into something deeper. They complemented each other perfectly. Her careful planning and advanced technology combined with his creative chaos and willingness to try anything. The Diplomatic Solution dropped out of hyperspace above the disputed world and immediately received threatening messages. From the planetary defense forces, Jinwoo just laughed and began calculating blast patterns while Hyojin opened diplomatic channels. It was going to be an interesting conversation, and if diplomacy failed, they had enough explosives to make their point very clearly. After all, in a galaxy full of dangers, it helped to have a partner who was willing to face them all with you, preferably while carrying enough firepower to level a small city. Their love story had started with explosions, and it Looked like it would continue the same way for a very long time.